So now for the prequels. So when they first released, I was still fairly young. I think it was 10 around the time, or 10, 11 area. But I was fairly young, so a lot of people these days say, oh, well, people look at the prequels with rose-tinted goggles or glasses, or whatever their saying is. But for me, this was the first one I saw in theaters was the Phantom Menace. And then Attack of the Clones, I was a little bit older. And I do remember being more disappointed with that one. And when I heard Revenge of the Sith was going to be the most dark, the most different, I guess, of the trilogy, I was like, ooh, it's going to be violent. And in a way it was, but I don't think it was up to the standards I had set in my mind for that. Simply because I was definitely getting more mature, and my taste of movies, especially when they say dark movies, was developing more and more to, say, like 80s style movies where it's over the top action and all that. So I will say positive first. It did a good job of introducing how the Jedi were, how the Old Republic ran before the Empire rose, and the rise of Darth Vader and the Emperor Palpatine. So I think story-wise, it was solid. The problem was, since George Lucas himself pretty much did everything, including directing and all that, it didn't turn out as well as it could have. It could have been it could have been more like The Empire Strikes Back if he had different, like, co-writers helping him fill in gaps here and there, or different directors for each movie. Like, he could have done The Phantom Menace, someone else could have done Attack of the Clones, and then had a third person do Revenge of the Sith. So I think with him helming everything and being clearly as tired and worn out as he was in the 2000s, I think he should have help hand the reins over, or help direct, or had help. Because George Lucas, he does have good ideas, he's a good story writer, but he's just not a good director. But with that being said, like I said, it's a good story writer. The biggest drawbacks from me looking at when I was rewatching them when I was older was how very stiff all the acting is. Even Samuel L. Jackson, a very experienced actor, looked very stiff and sedated, I guess. Obviously I wasn't expecting him to be like over the top, say what again, motherfucker, kind of thing. I wasn't expecting that in any way, shape, or form, but it did feel like everyone was very robotic and stiff. And Jake Lloyd, being brand new actor at the time, definitely did what he could with what he was given. Everyone did what they could with what they were given. I think Ian McKellen, the guy who plays Sheev Palpatine, aka the Emperor, he did arguably the better of the jobs. And then Ian McGregor playing Obi-Wan, he did a good job. And he wasn't stiff throughout the whole movie, all three movies. He definitely got better and better. Christian Haydenson, he did a little bit better, but I think he is a very stiff actor as it is, because even in Jumper, I think it was called, where he could jump around, he looked very stiff and very emotionless, where sometimes that does work because the Jedi were supposed to be like almost robotic, I guess is the term I'm thinking of, and they're not supposed to have strong emotions left or right kind of thing. They can have, I think this didn't change, but they could have lovers, but they couldn't have attachments. So they could have lovers, but they couldn't have marriages or anything like that, which the Jedi saw as something that could turn against them, kind of thing. Like whenever a family member for a police officer is taken hostage, that officer cannot be involved because of emotional attachments. and might do something rash. So, in a way, that makes sense, but it's just kind of weird that they can have lovers, not in marriages. But basically, the story of the prequels is to tell the rise of Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine and the fall of the Republic and Jedi Order. And it's very clear that when we get to Coruscant in Phantom Menace, how stiff and rigorous the Jedi are. Like, they won't train Anakin because he's too old and he has too much fear in him. And that kind of shows that when they say, oh, he's too old, and they did say this in Empire Strikes Back with Yoda, but when you're too old, it is harder to manipulate you. So, yeah, they want to try to get those who are sensitive to the Force as young as possible to help suppress feelings and stuff like that, which, again, makes sense, but at the same time, it's like, oh, well, that's very, very dogmatic. That's very manipulative. And that was one of the reasons the Jedi Order fell. Not only that, but they were very arrogant and sure that they knew everything. Because in Attack of Clones, when Obi-Wan is looking for Kamino, the librarian says, if it's not in the Jedi archives, it does not exist. So it was just it shows the horse blinders on all the Jedi and just how arrogant and rude they are to everyone and everything. And then even in the Revenge of the Sith, they never expected that the clones would turn on them, and that the Senate was being controlled by a Sith until Anakin discovered and told them. And even then, they said Mace Windu and a couple of other Jedi Masters stormed into Palpatine's office, just going on the word of Anakin, and drew the lightsabers and said, "You're under arrest," and saying the Senate will decide your fate with 4 lightsabers drawn. And that was when Palpatine dropped his guys in front of them. But it was just, even before that, Mace said, well, we have to move quickly if the Jedi is going to take over. So it was just it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you guys are real, you guys are dickheads, cool. And it all played into Palpatine's plan. But I'm going to go back to the Phantom Menace. Basically, a blockade of the planet Naboo is being investigated by the Senate, and the Chancellor at the time sent 2 Jedi to make negotiations to end the blockade. And people are suspicious of why they sent 2 Jedi, and the people doing the blockade are convinced that they're there to kill them, so they attempt to kill the Jedi, and the Jedi make it off the blockade ship that they're on and land on Naboo. 2 Jedi being Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon Jinn and Ian McGregor's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Upon entering Naboo, they meet the Gungan people, and one Gungan, Jar Binks, helps them out to get the Naboo Queen, Natalie Portman, off planet. And they successfully do, but they need to go to Tatooine, where they meet Anakin Skywalker, and after a semi-rigged race, they free Anakin from enslavement and go to Coruscant to inform the Senate what's going on, and to see if Anakin will be trained. The council won't train Anakin. Qui-Gon goes, I'll train him instead. And everyone goes back to Naboo because no one's going to help Naboo people. And there's a war, a small battle, I should say, not a war. A battle. And then a Sith creature named Darth Maul shows up and kills Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan takes the mantle of Anakin's mentor. So I'm going to try to keep these summaries as quick as possible this time around, because there's just a lot to talk about. Story-wise, it's fine, like I said. The way it's executed could have been a lot better. One of the first lines in the movie literally goes, "With all due respect, sir, the chancellor's negotiators wish the board." And the way it was said, it feels like there was a line beforehand. So it feels like a lot would cut out, which, I mean, it happens, but if you're going to have that to be the first line, and the way you have it said, it should be like, "Greetings, we are from Coruscant. We have 2 negotiators from the Chancellor who wish the board." And then if they refuse, it's like, "With all due respect," kind of thing. Don't start off with all due respect, like you've been arguing with this person for a while. The costumes are really good. Even the Nemonians, who have like this lip thing, when they talk, the lip comes out a little bit, like a flap, I guess. And I'm not sure if that was CG'd or if it was like a feature on the mask. Whenever someone talks, they push a mechanism, but it looks really good. So all the sets, even when it's highly CG'd and it hurts your eyes, they still look good. They look a lot better than some of the stuff we have today, even though some of it didn't age very well. The character Jar Binks was meant to be like a replacement for Chewbacca, just as a sidekick, but my opinion is they made him a little too over the top. Ahmed Beck, who played him, if I remember correctly, he contemplated suicide because of all the negative feedback. I don't blame the actor at all. I didn't see what people call a stereotyping of black people. Because again, I was 10, 11 years old around that time. And even to this day, I still don't see it. I just see a character that was a little over the top. And they even went through, I think, 3 different iterations for how to do Jar Binks. They were going to do a puppet that was really expensive. That didn't work out. Then they did a partial CG, and then they went full CG. So I think Jar Binks was not a last minute thing, but it sounds like it was a last minute addition. And even in the books, he seemed a little less annoying. He was with the Jedi throughout the whole of the movie, except the end where they fight the Droid Army. He's a general, which even in the book was, everyone hated that idea except Jar Jar. Well, no, except Boss Nass. The build up for the Trade Federation being the bad guys was like slammed in your face first thing, especially after they tried to kill the Jedi, just because they were told that the Chancellor shouldn't have sent them by a mysterious hooded figure who we find out later is Palpatine. I forget the reasoning why they joined. I think it was because they joined this. I think they weren't getting favors in the Senate like they wanted. That they're portrayed as very greedy people. The introduction of Darth Maul is very simple, very quick, and I think that's how you should do villains, is very quick, very subtle. As in the entire movie, he has all of 2 lines, and they're very quick. And Ray Park, who portrayed Darth Maul, did an excellent job. He still does a lot of choreographing for other movies like G.I. Joe for Snake Eyes. When he goes to Comic-Cons, he's more than happy to show off his skills. And he looks like an awesome guy all around. The Droid Army, I think, was a weird choice given the fact that in the original trilogy, no one seemed to have major issue with droids after all of this. Despite the fact that they were the galaxy-wide army of the Separatists. I think that would be one of the retcons, or one of the things doing the prequels after the original kind of screwed some things up. And people can say, oh, well, everyone can tell the difference between a battle droid and a protocol droid. And it's like, well, still, they're droids. I mean, we, even to this day, have some issues with people we fought in wars and stuff like that. Anywho, the blockade of the Naboo, it wasn't much of a blockade. Even after they said we only need one of our ships, one of our command ships to control Naboo after the takeover, you still only have one ship. It's not a blockade anymore. And even if you round up all the pilots and stuff like that, you still have the entire planet of other spaceports and people who can fly to worry about. And unless you do that very quickly, you're going to have issues with people leaving, which you did. Not only did you have trouble keeping one ship from leaving, that one ship flew literally straight at the ship with the commands, with the only ship in the entire system. And no one said, why don't we go around, or why don't we go under, or why don't we just make a loop? And I don't know, space battles in Star Wars have always frustrated me, since they don't take advantage of space. And when they're escaping, we are introduced to R2-D2, who saved all the lives, since he was the only droid that wasn't shot off the ship, which again is hilarious. Watching all these comparatively small bumps on a ship get sniped off like it's just their clay pigeons. Except R2-D2. Tatooine, more creatures were introduced to. We're also introduced to creatures that aren't affected by the Force, like Watto, who is Anakin's master. Because at this point, Anakin is a slave. And he's also 10 or something like that. He's young. And they pretty much said he was already a genius at some stuff. He's the one who built C-3PO to help his mom out at the house when he wasn't there. He built a pod racer, which is, if you don't know what pod racing is, it's basically 2 jet engines with a pod, a seat in the back. Yeah, that was actually pretty interesting idea. I kind of like it, assuming that you don't fry yourself. But Watto is immune to the Jedi mind trick, where Qui-Gon is trying to say, oh, well, Republic credits will do, and Watto's saying, no, they won't. And when he tries it again, Watto even says, "What, do you think you're some sort of Jedi? Jedi mind tricks don't work on me." And it's just like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, we got a hint of that in Return of the Jedi, when Luke is trying to convince Jabba to give Han back, well, give everyone back, and he doesn't seem to be affected by the Force, but they don't outright say, you can't affect me with your Force tricks. Watto's CG, it's okay. It's not the greatest, but I think it still holds up a little bit better than a lot of stuff these days. The pod race itself, the animations still look awesome on that. Jake Lloyd's acting in the pod is, I mean, it's very limited to what you can do when you're racing. You just go kind of thing, like, oh, turn, bare your teeth, brake, oh, something's wrong. Yeah, Darth Maul makes his way to Tatooine as well, and almost gets the Jedi, and Liam Neeson and Ray Park go at it for a short time. And I think one of the mistakes in this fight was they put up a lot of dust. And I know it's a desert, so it's going to be a little dusty, but I think they put too much to mask some things. Coruscant itself is a giant city, so it looks weird. And I think out of all the planets they go, one of the planets they go to, this one looks the worst. There's another one in Revenge of the Sith where it's all fungi and forest that looks terrible. Like, this CG for the city and that world don't hold up. The entire Senate sequences is very awkward and slow, especially for Natalie Portman, who, I don't know if this was her first films or not, but she looks extremely stiff, and the amount of costume changes she gets, it's ridiculous. Like, she walks through a door and she has a different outfit on. The fact that no one saw that when Palpatine said, well, why don't you do a vote of no confidence and put me in charge? No one said, well, why? So that was a big indication of his manipulation of Queen Amidala, Natalie Portman's character. So when no one is going to help them, the whole cast that we've been with throughout the movie goes back to Naboo to beg the Gungans, who got kicked out of their homes because they have swimmer droids apparently. And the Gungans say, yeah, we'll help you. And I didn't know, but a lot of that set, even though it looked CG, was practical. So there is a lot of CG on the sets, and like I said, a lot of it holds up, some of it doesn't. And I think the practical effects helps hold stuff up like that, where everything's green screen is just like, ew. The battle itself with the Gungans and the droids, that looks alright, not great, especially the goo balls that are like electronic or EMPs. Again, there's just so much CG going on in there. The battle with the Naboo and the droids in the hangar, well, the palace, that looks a little bit better. A little clunky. And the fight with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, that was definitely the highlight of the movie, with how choreographed it was. And it is very clearly very choreographed, like, there's no denying it. But I think the prequel battles are definitely above and beyond than what they did in the original trilogy, given new technology and props and all that. I think they killed off Qui-Gon a little too quickly. I think if they could have stuck him around for half of Attack of the Clones, maybe make it a little more impactful, like, oh, we got to know this character a little bit better. Darth Maul, as cool as he was, I don't think he was as cool as a lot of people make him out to be. They later develop him in the Clone Wars series, but honestly, I didn't care much for him. He was just this intimidating looking creature, and that was it, because knowing that this movie was more about the rise of the Emperor, that's what made me go, oh, okay. Especially when they say, Mace Windu later says there's always two, no, Yoda says there's always two, apprentice and a master. So after that, the celebration of the freedom of Naboo takes place, and we see Anakin is now a Jedi apprentice. He's an apprentice. Attack of the Clones, the second in the prequel trilogy. The same problems pretty much persist. The story is fine. The acting is still very stiff, with Ian McGregor still being probably the more loose of the stiff of the actors, I guess, is the only term I can think of. But it's very clearly this is the romance of the trilogy, like The Empire Strikes Back. The only problem is this one, it's a lot creepier, simply because the huge age gap between Anakin and Padme. And it's just, I'll also say Natalie Portman still very stiff in this one. She doesn't seem to let loose or reciprocate the love that Anakin is giving. And I'm sure there's in-universe reasons, like obviously he's a Jedi, he's not supposed to have attachments, but no one seems to pick up that he's oddly attached to Padme. Or they do, but they allow it because Anakin is the chosen one who's going to bring balance to the Force, which the Jedi see as destroying the dark side, which isn't balance. That's tipping the scales in the favor of light, despite the fact that's already is, because there's only 2 Sith, and that's hundreds and hundreds of Jedi. But whatever. Also, Christian Hayden's lovey-dovey side is still very creepy-ish, especially the way he emotes. Yeah, it comes off almost stalkery at time. So I think George could have done a little bit better with the directing, saying, "Hey Christian, could you do me a favor? Could you seem less like a serial killer stalker and more like, oh, I'm sorry, Padme, I didn't mean to creep you out," kind of thing. So the other plot is trying to figure out who tried to assassinate Padme. Because in the beginning, right after a very creepy, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you, Padme, you look more beautiful, please marry me" exchange, Padme is almost assassinated by 2 poisonous bugs, and they track the wannabe assassin, but find out the wannabe assassin was hired by another assassin who escapes. So Obi-Wan is sent on that mission while Anakin is sent to protect Padme. And of course, they go to Naboo at first, and comes the stupid line of, "I hate sand, it gets everywhere," which everyone makes the fun of, it is a silly line. But he was just comparing what Padme said. It's still a silly line, and it almost deserves to be made fun of, but whatever. I'm sure we've never had any dumber lines before. So they go to Naboo, and then like 2 days later, because Anakin had a bad dream, they go back to Tatooine in an attempt to save Anakin's mom. Anakin's mom is killed by sand people, and he slaughters them like the animals they were. And more showing of him going to the dark side, becoming more like Vader, because he killed not only the men but the women and children as well. We're also introduced to the Aunt Beru and Uncle Lars as younger people. Obi-Wan does track down Jango Fett, if that name sounds familiar. He is on a planet called Kamino, which, again, that was the planet that he was looking for, where the librarian says if it doesn't exist, or if it's not in our archives, it doesn't exist. But the data for Kamino was erased. We later learn, it's kind of implied that only a Jedi could delete data from the archives, and we learn that the hidden villain, Count Dooku, played by the awesome Christopher Lee, the late Christopher Lee, who's awesome in everything he's ever been in. So yeah, we find out he's the main antagonist behind everything in the movie, because he's following orders from Palpatine. And he deleted the data on Kamino to keep the clone army a secret. And Jango Fett is the genetic template for the clone army. And I later learned that the upcoming Clone Wars, was actually not as portrayed in the movies. George Lucas had a different idea for them. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it wasn't supposed to be where it was an army of clones fighting an army of droids. I think it was an army of clones that rebelled against the Republic or the Empire. but it was very different. Like, I even learned that Leia wasn't meant to be Luke's sister. He had a sister, but it wasn't meant to be Leia. I mean, I guess 20, 30 years of not doing a movie and making some changes here and there, it does, it can change. But anyway, Jango Fett tries to kill Obi-Wan while escaping, doesn't. We're shown Boba Fett, who's the only unaltered clone of Jango, because that was his price, was he wanted one unaltered clone, basically a child. And even once we get to see Jango, they pretty much said, yeah, he's the bad guy, because he's very secretive, careful with his words, and the fact that Bubba closes a closet where his armor is very clearly shown, like right there, laying on the floor, perfectly like, hey, this isn't a movie prop. We didn't stick it here purposefully so you can see it, kind of thing. You didn't even take the time to try to put in a hidden closet or put a towel over it or something. Obi-Wan chases Jango, tries to get hold of the council, realizes he's too far, and Anakin's the only one who can transmit his message. Transmits the message, and Padme's like, hey, we're going to go to Geonosis to help Obi-Wan out. And Anakin's like, well, I'm supposed to protect you. We're supposed to stay here. And Padme's like, yeah, you're supposed to protect me, and I'm going. And it was just like, ooh, you're defying the law. Kinky. Yeah. It was on Geonosis we find about Count Dooku, a.k.a. Darth Tranus, which is weird because I think they mentioned Darth Tranus, that name, all of once in the movie. And even even Dooku doesn't have yellow eyes like a Sith, so I think not using the title Darth was appropriate. It was just more he was a fallen Jedi who had not fully embraced the dark side, but embraced it, kind of thing. So Padme and Anakin are taken prisoner and are to be executed with Obi-Wan in a gladiatorial type arena with animals to kill them, which obviously fails. Because, I mean, obviously it fails because there wasn't an original trilogy that came out before this, so we know Obi-Wan and Anakin are fine. That's what I hate about doing the original trilogy and then going back. Like, it kind of ruins suspense. But I think George just wanted to have an explanation for how Darth Vader and the Empire rose, so I don't hold that against him. The Jedi come to the rescue in a very flashy appearance. In a flashy way, I should say. The Droid Army is revealed. Most of the Jedi actually get killed. There's a couple of them who I think get killed a couple of times because of extras and all that, and then the Grand Army of the Republic comes to their rescue, and the last battle of the movie takes place where Anakin gets his hand cut off by Count Dooku. Yoda shows off his Force abilities, and Dooku and Yoda are kind of on par with each other. I think Yoda was holding back just because that's what he does. And then they show Yoda using his lightsaber skills, which looks ridiculous, because he's jumping around, flipping, whereas every other scene he's in, he has a cane or sitting down, and he's not shown as a lightsaber wielding person. So it does look a little ridiculous, but the reasoning behind him doing the flips and all that is because he is a shorter creature. He has to take advantage. yeah, he has to use the Force to fight mostly. But when he has to use the lightsaber, that's what he does, is to confuse his enemies with where the blade is and all that. So, as goofy as it looks, I think it's alright. Not great. And Dooku gets away. Don't remember I mentioned Anakin gets his hand cut off. And the last scene of the last couple scenes is where Yoda says the veil of the dark side has lifted, begun the Clone Wars has, and Anakin and Padme are getting married on Naboo. Oh, and Anakin has a fancy new hand. Not like Luke did, but it's a robotic CG'd hand. So yeah, and that will take us into Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith starts out with a giant space battle, which kind of takes advantage of space, but at the same time, it doesn't. But it shows Anakin is definitely more matured. Obi-Wan is still mature, but I think he's a little looser than he was, a little less stiff than he was before. They go to a new droid, General Grievous's ship to rescue the Chancellor, who was kidnapped. And there were 2 cartoons that explained his kidnapping. The first one came out in 5-minute chunks, because it was all hand-drawn back in the day. And it was before the Revenge of the Sith hit theaters. It was exclusively on Toonami, and it was quite arguably some of the best Star Wars shorts out there. I still truly enjoy them. I want to see them again, but I still don't want to subscribe to Disney Plus to get them. Anywho, Count Dooku is killed by Anakin by beheading when the Chancellor pretty much says, kill him, it's the right thing to do, you wanted to do it for such a long time, take your revenge. And yeah, so kids cartoon, kids show, yes. But all's well, and in the end, General Grievous gets away. The battle over Coruscant is over, and without Dooku, the Separatist forces pretty much don't have a good leader, because even Grievous says, what about the death of Dooku? How's this going to affect us? And Sidious, the Emperor, says, well, I have a new apprentice on the way, don't you worry. And the Republic finds out the location for Grievous's hiding place. Padme tells Anakin she's pregnant and is worried about their future. The future as a senator, which is weird that she's worried about that. And Anakin's future as a Jedi. So Anakin's like, oh, everything will be okay, don't worry about it. Palpatine convinces the Jedi Council to put Anakin on there. Palpatine can have a spy on the Council, because Palpatine and Anakin have become friends over the years. And at the same time, the Council asks Anakin to spy on the Chancellor for them. So, yeah, Anakin's given one thing. He's not made a master, and only masters can go on the Council. And then the Council tells him, oh, well, we want you to spy on your friend for us. So, given even more pushes for Anakin to turn to the dark side and not trust the Jedi. Obi-Wan is sent to hunt Grievous down and end the war. And yeah, this separates the only good in Anakin from him, because Obi-Wan in the movies were shown to be the only way Anakin would stay calm, remain in the light and stuff like that, because they were, although master and apprentice, at this point they were almost equals, since Obi-Wan was on the Council, but he treated Anakin as an equal and as a really good friend. Because even when they parted, Obi-Wan says, goodbye, old friend, And that's when he leaves, and when they meet again, that's when Anakin's turned to Darth Vader. So a lot of small, subtle nods and hints like that. It's nice to see. But yeah, it's kind of a sad story. So while Obi-Wan is fighting Grievous, Palpatine reveals to Anakin that he's the Sith Lord that they've been looking for. Anakin tells the Council, and the Council goes to kill him, / arrest him, / ruin any chance of the Jedi showing that they were still good guys to the entire galaxy. And Anakin kills Mace Windu before Mace is able to kill Palpatine, despite the fact that he said, well, we need to bring him in alive so he can confess to the Senate. And then he says he's too powerful to be kept alive. So there's a lot of writing errors in that aspect. Whereas, are you trying to arrest him? Are you trying to kill him? Do you want to bring him in alive? Do you want to kill him? Do you want the Jedi to take over? Do you want the Senate to take over? There was just a lot of rushed in that scene. But I will give credit to the actor who played Palpatine. He did his own choreographed fights in that particular fight, and it shows. It really does show. But it was still good. So after that, the Emperor dissolves the Republic, makes it the Empire, declaring himself the Emperor, and executes Order 66, which is basically all the clones turn on their Jedi generals. And Anakin leads the 501st, which is his personal clone platoon, squadron, I forget what the term is, into the Jedi Temple and kills all the Jedi there. And Padme doesn't know what's going on. She's worried that Anakin is dead because the temple's burning. He succeeds in his mission and is told to go to Mustafar to end the Separatist leadership because that's where they're waiting. Obi-Wan successfully kills Grievous, escapes his own execution, and through Yoda learns about Anakin's fate, becoming Darth Vader, and is told by Yoda to go to Mustafar to kill him. And Obi-Wan pretty much objects, saying, I can't kill him. I see him as my brother. He is my friend. And Yoda's like, oh, well, you don't have a choice. You have to do it. And it's just like, ugh. Thanks, Yoda. Being such a dick now. So while Obi-Wan confirms with Padme about Anakin being the father of her child, and Yoda goes to confront the Emperor. More CG fighting ensues because obviously those two are almost neck to neck with Force abilities. And the fight, it is kind of hilarious. You got Yoda bouncing around all over the place. And then you have Palpatine tossing Senate hover chairs. And at one point Yoda catches one, starts spinning it, and then throws it. And it's like, okay, that's a little weird. But Yoda escapes. Obi-Wan and Anakin fight after Anakin mortally chokes Padme with the first use of Force choke for Anakin, which will become Darth Vader's signature move. Anakin is severely burned through lava, the heat of the lava, and that's when he becomes Darth Vader in the suit. Padme gives birth to Luke and Leia, and she dies because of a broken heart, which was the lamest death in the entire saga. Everything is fine with her. She just seems to have a broken heart. What? Whatever. It would have just been better if maybe she was choked to death and they had a C-section, the baby's out or something. And this part also makes less sense because Leia says she remembers her mom vaguely, and when you're born, I don't think you remember much of anything. The twins are separated, with Luke going to Tatooine for Obi-Wan to watch over, and Leia going to Alderaan with 2 senators to watch her. So, yeah. And the movie wraps up with the building of the Death Star, a quick shot of Tarkin, Vader, and the Emperor watching the construction, and then the Lars family standing on the farm with the twin sons. So, basic summaries of the movies. Again, story-wise, it could have played out a lot better. I think direction-wise, they needed a different director than George Lucas himself. He could have been a co-director, but I think they needed to have people say, okay, guys, you need to emote more. You need to let loose. You don't have to be stiff statues or anything like that. And behind-the-scenes stuff I've seen, they all had a great time and all that, but when the cameras turned on, it seemed like too much of, okay, this is business, this is what we're doing, put on your game face kind of thing. A lot of the CG, I said, holds up okay. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't. There's a lot of sets that were very practical, like Mustafar was a miniature for a lot of it, which was cool. If you think Lord of the Rings, like Isengard, that was an ultra miniature, and then they blew it up on the screen, so that's similar to what they did with Mustafar. They cut that out of foam, painted it in all the lava. The lightsaber choreography, Attack of the Clones with the Dooku and Anakin fight was lame. It was just them spinning the lightsaber around, spinning and spinning and spinning, and then Dooku finally cut his hand off. So it was just basically a light show. The Obi-Wan versus Anakin fight, I was hoping for a little bit more, but in universe reason, I can see that they knew each other pretty much beat for beat, so they were doing very calculated moves and doing it as fast as they can, trying to end it. But when it's like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down kind of thing, it's like, okay, this isn't a fight. This is weird. The two Yoda fights when he's using his lightsaber against human opponents, it is very silly. It's him flipping around everywhere. But again, I can understand with his height, that was just how he fought. I remember in the original Clone Wars cartoon that led up to the Revenge of the Sith, he actually was running on the ground slicing droids. And I do recommend watching the, I forget his name, but the director who did Samurai Jack, watching his stuff. If you have a Disney Plus account, Gendy Tartakovsky. Yeah. He did Dexter's Laboratory, Samurai Jack. I definitely recommend watching the 2003 series. Gonna wrap it up here, guys. So thank you for listening to the prequel chat. Like I said, they could have done a lot better than before, but I'm glad for what we had. Got more backstory into how the Old Republic worked, how the Jedi were before the fall, and why they fell. So thank you for listening. I hope you stick around for the sequel. See ya.